Okay, we'll move along to superintendent recommendations and reports.
Thank you, Mr. Begley. At this time, I would like to ask Dr. Rice to cover the items listed under Personnel Professional and Personnel Support.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Bagley, and members of the board. I have several items for your consideration this evening under Personnel Professional. Number 1, resignations, letter A and B. Number 2, extracurricular resignations, letter A through C. Number 3, unpaid leave of absence, letters A and B. And number 4, employment, letters A through E. That concludes all the items I have for your consideration under Personnel Professional.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendations as read.
So moved.
Second.
That's Mrs. Shorter and Ms. Birding. Mrs. Lane, you call the roll.
Mrs. Shorter?
Yes.
Ms. Birding?
Yes.
Mrs. Gundrum?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Begley?
Yes.
Mr. Bagley and members of the board, I have several items for your consideration this evening under Personnel Support. Number 1, resignation, letter A through D. Number 2, unpaid leaves of absence, letters A and B. Number 3, employment, letters A through O. And that concludes all items I have for your consideration under Personnel Support.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. Again, I'll entertain a motion to accept these recommendations.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Gundrum and Mrs. Shorter. Any discussion? I would just like to say that clearly Mrs. Hauser has been busy, right? We've had a lot of continued employment activity.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Ms. Lane, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Gundrum?
Yes.
Mrs. Shorter?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Birding?
Yes.
Mr. Begley?
Yes.